So today we're going to talk about how to do strategic searches online. So it may sound like a bit of a basic topic, but a lot of the research that our team does about misinformation and the tracking that we do on vaccine narratives is based on the ability to construct good searches. So today we're going to learn how to be more thoughtful and how to be more strategic in our searches. And I hope this would be useful in general and not just for vaccine misinformation. So, 4 things on our agenda today. Firstly, we are going to talk about keywords and how to use keywords more strategically. Then we are going to talk about Boolean queries, what they are and how to master them. We're also going to talk about sources and what that means online. Then finally, we'll touch on site searches and quote searches, which are two of the tricks that we use the most in our research. This is me. I'm Esther Chan, First Draft's APAC Bureau Editor, and I'm based in Sydney. Okay, so how to be smart about keywords? A search is really only as good as your keywords, right? So whether you get good quality search results depends on the words that you use to construct your search. But there are actually ways to be really strategic with the words that you're searching, such that you can find whatever you need online. Here on the left, we have some possible keywords for COVID-19. You may want to think about misspellings like coronavirus and geographic keyword like Wuhan, as well as different permutations of the same word. For example, this one has a dash and this one doesn't. There are also conspiratorial keywords that you could use, like narratives about Bill Gates' involvement in vaccine drive, and whether COVID is not as bad as the flu, etc. And then we have, as comparison, keywords about media bias. So when people talk about the bias of media, they use words like deplatformed. They may use phrases like won't cover this or won't report. So we also need to think about phrases. Basically, in general, we need to think about the way people talk on the internet. And sometimes that can be a little bit different from how they talk in real life. Also, we need to understand how ideology affects the language that people use. So when you're doing your searches, you have to remember this because people who believe in different things can be using entirely different terms. For example, here on the left, we have an example of someone who supports vaccines. So this is Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of Bill and Hillary Clinton. And in her tweet, she says, "It's not too much to ask. Please #believe nurses, #mask up, be a flu fighter and vaccinate yourself and your family." So you can see that she's used a number of keywords here that we can pay attention to. Maybe mask up is a term that people who support masks and support vaccinations are using a lot online. Also terms like flu fighter, believe nurses, etc. So people who are pro-vaccines, generally speaking, use different words than people who are anti-vaccine. For example, the term anti-vaxxer, which you would have heard a lot, it is often used to refer to people who don't support vaccines. But then if you yourself don't support vaccines, you probably wouldn't use the word to describe yourself or other people with similar beliefs, right? And then sometimes people who are against vaccines use terms like vaccine skeptics or vaccine choice. So over on the right, we have an example from the other end of these expressions. This person says, "The day New Jersey parents told #Big Pharma at the State House, no to segregation and no mandates, sending a message to the entire world that your children's medical decision is your choice." So vaccine choice, that would be the term here, right? And then also the hashtag at the bottom of the tweet, medical freedom. That's also pretty common in the anti-vaccine community. So you can see the language this person uses is very different from people who support vaccines. Also, we should always be on the lookout for new keywords. If you're trying to improve your monitoring or your research into how people are talking about vaccines online, pay attention to new kinds of language that people might be using. Here, this is a post from a Facebook page called Learn the Risk. The page is about the risk of vaccines. And there are a number of interesting phrases and words that we notice here. For example, profits before people. So this is one of the 6 themes that we saw repeatedly in our research about vaccine misinformation. And we've categorized the claims that link vaccines to monetary rewards under political and economic motives. And then you have side effects, also discussions about how vaccines may affect the brain barrier. It may lead to neurological changes, as well as encephalopathy, which is when an infection causes inflammation on the surface of the brain. So some of these medical terms are not something everyone would have heard of, and it may be a signal about new concerns that people have about vaccines. So this would be something that we should be tracking. And moving on to Boolean queries. So a Boolean query is a way of searching that helps you find really specific information. So they're based on using specific search operators. These are words that you include in your searches that do different functions. And this sort of searches work on Twitter, Google, and other search platforms as well. So 2 of the main operators in Boolean queries are and or. So and limits your results. If you were to write vaccine and injury and then paste that into Twitter or Google, the search platform would give you every post that includes both the word vaccine and the word injury. On the other hand, when you put in the word or, it expands your search results. So if you were to type Moderna or Pfizer into the search platform, it would give you any post that includes either Moderna or Pfizer. There is also the minus sign, which helps you exclude certain results. So if you were to type in vaccine minus Moderna, you would get every post that talks about vaccines, but doesn't mention Moderna. Now here's where things get pretty interesting with Boolean queries. You can use parentheses to combine and or searches in many creative ways to help you find what you're looking for. So for example, we say Moderna or Pfizer and injury or harm. And what is this going to give you? If you type this into Google or Twitter, it's going to give you every result that uses either the word Moderna or the word Pfizer. And it also uses either the word injury or the word harm. So the signal we're giving the platform is that we want to get posts that have at least one of these and also at least one of these, right? And here is a more complicated example. It looks a little bit intimidating, but it's actually quite simple if you break it down. As you can see in this search query, all of the words in this first group of parentheses are words about vaccines. So we say vaccine or vaccinate or Moderna or Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and then AstraZeneca with a different spelling. And then in this second group of words, we have words about harm. So we say injury or harm or death or side effects with quotation marks, autism, Bell's palsy, sick, fever, brain barrier, or encephalopathy. So what we're trying to do with this query, if we type this and then put it into, say, Twitter, we're going to get every result that uses at least one of these words, and then at least one of these, and they are connected by the and operator. So that's pretty handy instead of manually looking through all the search results when you just put in keywords separately. And this is actually the same search query, but there are a couple of things I want to point out about here. Remember we talked about misspellings earlier, with the AstraZeneca with a K. So one of the first things that we should consider is misspellings. It sounds a little bit silly, but if something is often misspelled, or some people like to misspell it just to try to, maybe dodge the censorship from, just avoid being detected on platform. And you want to capture that in your search results as well. Another thing I want to point out is the quotation marks. So notice that for the most part, we don't really use quotations. And that's because we only use them when we're using terms that have more than one word. So a word like vaccinate, you don't really need quotation marks. And also for words that are connected by a dash, so like side effect, you also don't need quotation marks either. But you do need that for a phrase like brain barrier, because otherwise you get result with either brain or maybe barrier, but not the whole thing together. Also notice that all of these words are lowercase. So we capitalize the Boolean operators, which are and or, but then we keep everything else lowercase because that doesn't really affect the result. One thing to bear in mind is that Booleans are iterative, so you have to tweak them as you go. And it's not going to be the case where you write like a perfect Boolean search query and then it gives you exactly what you want. It would be more like a work in progress. So you'll probably have to see what kind of results you're getting, see if they make sense. And if they don't, maybe it's because you forgot to capitalize a Boolean operator, or maybe you should group your words in a different way. So it's pretty important to just not to get frustrated and try out different combinations. For those of you who may feel a little bit overwhelmed right now as to how to use Boolean queries, we're actually going to practice this live in our next session. So I'll show you how to use it during our webinar, how to create a Boolean query, how to post it in different search platforms and see how that works. That's in our next session. So coming back to what we were talking about, here's some tips about Boolean queries. First of all, always put and or in capital letters, and it won't work if you don't. Also use or to expand your results and to limit your results. Make sure you use quotation marks when your keyword is a phrase. Another thing is don't forget that people use words like me or my or I when they're talking about their personal experiences, right? So if you're interested to look for like tweets from someone who just got vaccinated, you might want to include words like my or I in your Boolean queries. Also, try to group similar keywords in parentheses. So you can use parentheses to tell the search platform that you're interested in any one of a group of keywords, and then you can connect the groups of keywords using the and or operators. So let's talk about sources. Normally in journalism, when we talk about sources, we would be referring to people who we call up on the phone, like experts in a certain area, or people we interview. But then when we're doing research online, sources are usually the different platforms where people share their experience, in this case with vaccine, with COVID, or the different accounts that talk about vaccines. So there are a lot of different sources for online discourse about vaccines. There are mainstream social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. There are also websites, enclosed space like WhatsApp groups, and also alternative platforms that have become more and more popular in the past few months, like Gab and Parler, or even Telegram, etc. So now we are going to talk about site searches. It's a very helpful trick that we use to find content online. You can do a site search on Google or whatever search platform you use. Most platforms will support this kind of searches. And you can indicate a website or a domain that you want to search within by using this language here. So site, and then the URL. And let's say you want to search for something on Facebook. So actually Facebook's native search function is pretty difficult to use. So even if you put in some keywords or, it's quite hard to find exactly what you're looking for. But then a workaround here is to search for content on Facebook through Google using a site search. For example, if you want to search for Facebook pages related to vaccines in the UK, you can do this by writing a search query that says site:facebook.com/pages, and then add a space, and then write in your search term. So what this is going to do is that it's going to tell Google that you're interested in content about vaccines in the UK, specifically on Facebook pages. And what's extra helpful is that in site searches, as you can see here, you can also combine that with Boolean queries. So this search query is telling Google that I want to see content that uses the word vaccine and the word UK, but specifically on Facebook pages. And if you look at the results, that's actually just what we get back. So there are pages named UK vaccination information, no mandatory vaccines, COVID-19 vaccine survey UK, etc. This also helps you find content based on language that is specifically written in a certain way. So if I want to look for Facebook pages that talk about vaccine choice, so this is a really specific term that usually only seen in groups where they don't agree with vaccine, right? So vaccine choice. And I'm going to try to do a site search for that. So I can put in my quote search here, vaccine choice, quotation marks, and then we have results that are relevant. So these are Facebook pages called Central Coast for Vaccine Choice, Texans for Vaccine Choice, and Vaccine Choice Nevada. So site searches are really useful, and you can use it on anything, like searching within Facebook groups. You can also try this with Twitter as well, and all you need is someone's Twitter handle. So for example, if we put in site:/twitter.com/firstdraftnews, and then you type in verification, then you would find every tweet that First Draft has ever posted using the word verification. So to sum up today's session, we've learned that we should really think strategically about keywords because they determine the quality of the results you get. Also, it's really helpful to incorporate Boolean queries in our searches, so try to practice using it and tweak as you go. And then we can search within platforms and websites that may not have a good native search function by using site searches, which is also a good skill to have.